welcome to another Stampin' Society blog hop. My name is Jo and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator. I'm based in the UK. So today we have a colour challenge for you. Now this was a really exciting colour challenge when I first saw it, and then when I sat down to create I realised, oh dear, what do I do with that? So these are the colours that we have got to play with. We've got Starry Sky, Pear Pizzazz, Shaded Spruce and Soft Suede. Into that we could also mix very vanilla cardstock, a colour which I don't use a great deal, which is a shame because it really is beautiful and it is quite a soft sort of colour. And then also we could add some gold metallics, which everyone loves a bit of metallic. So a really good opportunity to mix in some of these different things. So, as I say, these are the four colours mainly featured in today's card, as you can see, and I've got a combination of the different colours in here. I'm going to show you how I've made this card, and we're also going to talk about the stamp set, because this is an amazing new stamp set, which you can actually earn for free from January, and it's called Adorable Owls. Now, when I first saw this, I fell in love with it straight away, of course, because I love anything a little bit cutesy. But I just love these little characters. This one reminds me of sort of a little teacher or something. I need some big glasses on him. This one is really cute, and it's the one we're using today. And this one, of course, celebrates things like birthdays or any celebration, really. Just party hat, Christmas, whatever you like. But I just love them. So that's what I'm sharing with you today. And we're making a little square card. Square's not something I venture with very often, and I don't know why, because I really enjoy making square cards. There's something about the sort of space that you have with a square card which is really lovely. So let's get started. So there's a few different aspects to this actual card itself. I'm going to give you some measurements as we go. So this is a square card, as I say, and this is 5 inches square. So it's 10 inches across by 5 inches down. So that makes your nice 5-inch square card. I'm then going to start off. I'll give you the measurements as I go, just so that we don't get confused with what bit is what. So this is Starry Sky, and this measures 4 1/4 of an inch square. So if you're working in metric, the nearest for you would be probably about 10.5 centimetres square. I normally work in metric, of course, being in the UK, but when I'm working with a square card, I tend to work in inches. It's a bit of a strange one. So let's get started. I've just realised I didn't pick up a little brush I need, so that little one I do. Okay. So the first thing I wanted to do, as much as I love this colour, I wanted to give it a sort of bit of a two-tone effect. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my Starry Sky ink pad. So I'm working Starry Sky onto Starry Sky cardstock. Crikey, that's hard to say. And I'm just going to pick up some of this beautiful ink. Now this ink pad is really nice and juicy because it's fairly new. This is actually just a shiny surface, so any kind of shiny surface that you've got is good, because you tend not to use so much ink then. So can you see I'm just still picking up ink off the side of my mat here, and I'm just literally adding some colour to the edges and especially on the corners, just to give this a kind of a slight two-tone effect. I'm not sure how much you'll see on camera, but certainly in front of me I can see it's two-tone. Just going to pick up some more of that ink. It's just to add a little bit of depth to it, really, rather than it be a flat colour. It's amazing, just by adding tone on tone ink can actually sort of really lift a card. So I'm just working all the way around this. And once it dries, it really is sort of tone on tone. You can see it more when it's actually, the ink is still very wet. But you can probably see I've got just a slight lighter middle here. Okay, so now that I've done that, I want to create my splattered background. So as you can see here, I've used some white ink onto my blue background. So I'm going to carry on using my shiny matte because it will wash up really nicely. And I'm just going to be using our Whisper White craft ink. Now this is the ink that we use to ink our white ink pad, but it has so many great uses. So I tend to use it more on its own than I do for my ink pad, if I'm brutally honest. So I'm just going to squeeze a little amount onto my mat. I always try and keep it upside down when I'm storing that pot, because it tends to, because it's got a chalky background, it sort of dries out quite quickly. So I always try and keep it upside down so that the ink is always sort of near the squeezy bit where we squeeze out. And I'm just going to take a water painter, but you might realise I have no water in my actual canal here. I've completely taken the water out of this for this project, and indeed actually when I'm using this I tend to always have it empty. It's just the way I prefer to use it because you don't get too much water flow. So I'm going to mix in a little bit of water in with this. Now I don't want to add too much because this will stop it from ever really drying properly. So you want to mix in enough that we can get a sort of flick from it, but we don't want to mix in so much that it's really watery. So once I've mixed this in, I'm going to freshen my water on the end of my brush, just plain water, and I'm just going to splatter my background. Now you can do this as much or as little as you want. On my original card I had some quite big blobs on it, where I'd added a little bit more water. It obviously takes a lot longer to dry, so I'm trying to keep these as small as I can really, because I want these to dry while we are working on the actual project itself. Now, this can be a little bit messy. You don't have much control over where your ink is falling, so just try and be as sort of careful as you can, but protect any other surface where it's kind of needs protecting. Okay, so we've got lots of nice small little blodges this time, so hopefully it won't take too long to dry. I'm going to pop this whole thing to one side just to dry off. You can speed up the drying process if you want to by adding by just using a heat gun, but it does tend to make the ink bubble, so you need to be a little bit careful. Or failing that, you can use something like a white or clear embossing powder over the top of the ink and then heat set it, and then you know it's really set. So even if you've done it and you go back to it a few hours later and you can feel that the little white specks are still not setting properly, that probably means they never will do. So it's that moment that you really want to add some embossing powder just to set them off. Okay, so I've just cleaned my brush because I'm going to be using that again in a moment. Okay, so the next thing we have is, and I've used the brushed gold metallics, and I will just give you the quick measurements for this one. So first of all, in inches, you're going to be cutting at 4.5 inches. So it's just 1/4 inch larger than your blue piece. If you're using centimetres, we had 10.5, so you're probably going to want to go to about probably about 11 to give you your nice border on that one. Okay, then what we're going to do is to cut this middle section here. So I've already cut my 2 pieces of card. So we have the centre one here is 2.5 inches square, and the very vanilla is 2.25 inch. So again, if you're in centimetres, you're going to want to cut yours at about 5.5 and 6 centimetres respectively. Okay, it doesn't really matter, it's only a background, so it doesn't really matter as far as that's concerned. So the next thing I'm going to use is this lovely punch. Now this was and is available still in the winter catalogue, so the Christmassy sort of catalogue, and it's called the Very Best Trio Punch, and it kind of gets hidden a little bit in the catalogue, but I have to say this is one of the most versatile punches I've bought in a long while, and I absolutely love it. So predominantly you've got these three, two corners, and then you've got this little notch here. Well, this notch is really to make the notch to put your ribbon through. And then you've got these corners here. Now, I actually call it a quad punch because depending on which way you cut this one here, you actually get two different designs. So I'm going to bring in just a piece of scrap paper just so I can show you what I mean. So if I punch this one this way, you can see I've got an arch here. So I get this lovely soft arch, and then I get like is that a concave sort of arch at this end. So if I then moved it round to this side, you can see I get the arch at the top and the concave at the side. So this is where you need to be very careful when you're actually using it to create what I'm trying to create here, because I need these to match at this point. Okay, so this is what you just need to be a little bit careful of. So if I've got my square and I'm going to pop my square in, so the first one doesn't really matter which way I cut it because I'm always going to have one of each. Now I want this on here to have this same round edge, so I put this in this way. Okay, so now what I need to do is flip it upside down, and if I flip it upside down, I will then get the same edge on the other side. Now foil has layers, so sometimes if you catch a layer, you might just need to trim it off just very slightly. So can you see I've got those two arches? Now if I'd done it the other way, I would have ended up like this. So that's where you need to be careful. Now with this one, I want to make sure that I have got my concave piece in here. So I'm going in from the same angle. So whichever way you're facing is the way you always want to add your card into. So I'm going to punch this one, and you can see I've got that matching concave edge. And this time I need to flip it over again so that I've got that corner in the hole. So then you can see, again, it's just separated the layers on the gold. So just get your scissors if that happens. So I've got two nice rounded edges on either side, and I've got two lots of concave as well. So I'm going to do the same again. So remember, whichever way your punch is facing, I'm going to go in and I'm going to flip. Okay, so then I'm going to go in. She says she's questioning herself now, see? So I've got my concave bit that way, so I need to flip it that way. So just make sure if you're this way and you want to flip it to match, okay? That's probably the easier way to do it. So I've got this way. Now I want to flip it that way because I need it to match here. And there you go. Then I've got my four pieces, or my four corners, all matching. Okay, so I'm going to pop that to one side as well. We'll put all the elements together, give this blue section just a little time to dry. You can generally see when it's still wet, but I can see some of these little ones are going off already, so it won't take long. They'll soon go off, but we'll just have to be very careful handling it. So the next thing we wanted to do, I needed to incorporate the colours that we had. So we had Pear Pizzazz and Shaded Spruce were our greens. So I've done these leaves here in two-tone and single colour. So if I show you quickly how I've done those. So the first one I've got is Pear Pizzazz. And this is taken from the Forever Fern stamp set. So it's just these little ones here. I just used one of them So they were all facing the same way. So just use whichever one you prefer. And this is onto very vanilla cardstock. So that is Pear Pizzazz. I'm then going to ink it in Pear Pizzazz again. But this time I'm going to pick up a piece of the shaded spruce, and I'm going to use what I call the bopping technique. So I'm literally going to just bop it over the top, and you can do as little or as much as you want to. And I'm going to stamp, and then I've got this two-tone sort of leaf going on. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's quite distinctly different to the other one. And then, of course, I did the straightforward shaded spruce. Okay, so once I did those, I actually fussy cut these out. There are some dies that come with this stamp set, but I wanted to get really, really close to the edges. So I've already pre-prepared these so that you can see that's just how I cut them out. And then what I want to do is to create my little owl. Now this is, as I say, really cute little owl. And this is coloured in using a mixture of Stampin' Blends and also watercolour. Now, I know normally we wouldn't mix these, but I'm going to show you a little trick which will enable you to use a mix of mediums without having to kind of have to change your inks and things like that. Okay, so I have used a bit of artistic license on this, and I am stamping Owly onto basic white. I didn't feel comfortable stamping him onto vanilla because his eyes then were sort of like a creamy colour, and I wanted them to be white. So artistic license, I'm allowed, I think. So this is the cute little Owly stamp, and I'm using Versamark ink. So remember, when you're using Stampin' Blends, you always want to use Memento. Did I say Versamark? I did, didn't I? I meant Memento. So black Memento ink if you are using Stampin' Blends. And the way I always remember it is opposites attract. So with Memento is a dye-based ink, so it is not it hasn't got any alcohol. It's not an archival ink pad. So I'm using alcohol pens, so I want an ink pad that doesn't contain the alcohol. So on the flip side, if I'm using a watercolour, I need a ink pad that's not going to be water soluble. So I'm going to use an archival pad, something like Stays On. So that's kind of where the differences are. Okay, let's pop that to one side. So the first thing I'm going to do is to use my Stampin' Blends. So remember, these are fine with Memento ink. They're not going to make the actual black ink bleed in any way, shape or form. So we're going to lay those as the base first. So this is quite an easy little stamp to colour. There's lots of sort of lines that you can follow and get a general sort of feel for it. And I'm just using soft suede as one of our chosen colours here. So that was the dark one, and I'm just going to use the light now just to blend these through. And when I first put this down, you can see that there's a really distinct line. So I'm just going to concentrate on that little line. And being alcohol, they will actually blend together really nicely. So that's his little head. I can come back and touch him up if I want to. This is really quick and easy sort of colouring, really. I'll come back and do his feet and stuff in a little while. So remember, darkness is anywhere where there might be a shadow. So that's kind of what we're looking for. And again, I'm just going to colour in the other area and then concentrate just where they join, just so they blend together. I'm going to go back up here now. I can see that that's dried a little bit. Whoops. Gone onto his belly a little bit there, that's fine. If you do that, always use your corrector pen. So this is the colour lifter, and I'm going to just push that colour back away from that, where I've just gone over that line slightly. And that will just push the colour back into where it should be. But I don't want to add any more colour there at the moment until that's had a time just for the alcohol to evaporate. I have got a tickly throat, I'm sorry. Okay, and once you've laid down some of the ink, I can come back in with a little bit more of the dark. I'm so sorry, I think I'm getting a cold. I've behaved myself all night, and then as soon as I start recording, see. Okay. I've actually seen I've got a cough candy twist on my desk, so I'm going to pop that in. Hopefully it will stop me having a little tickle. Oh, brings me back to my childhood cough candy. So the next thing I want to do is his little feet. So I'm going to stick with the dark, she says as she picks up the light one. I'm going to stick with the dark. And I'm also going to add some onto his beak here. Okay, so now I've used my stamping blend. So in theory, now I shouldn't be using a watercolour base. So what I should be using is a StazOn ink. But because I've created this barrier with the alcohol inks, it's actually going to stop my ink running anyway when water hits it. So I've created that barrier, so now I can add a little bit of watercolour. But I want to be a little bit careful of how I do that. So I'm just taking my soft suede ink and I've just squished some of the ink into the lid here. And I'm just going to mix it up a little bit. Okay, because I want it reasonably light. But what I want to do is really important is to get most of the moisture off of your brush. So there's no excess moisture in your brush. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of ink, dab it off a little bit, and then slowly build up a little bit of colour around his eyes. Now, because I've created that barrier already, my water is not going to leak out anywhere else, okay? So it just enables you to mix your mediums without having too much worry. Now, this is not watercolour paper, obviously, so you need to be a little bit careful because water will, although it will sink into the actual paper, it will eventually rough up the edges of the paper. So you just want to be a little bit gentle with it, and it's better to let it dry if you can in between adding more colour, and then that should prevent any roughing up of the paper. And I'm going to do the same on his belly here. if it does start to rough up, like I'm getting a little bit there, I'm just going to sort of pull the colour away and just leave it to dry a little bit. Okay. I'm then going to take my Pear Pizzazz and do exactly the same. So I'm just going to mix up a little bit with the water. I'm going to virtually dry my brush off and then come back and pick up a little bit of the colour just to go round his eyes. So this is why I wanted him to be in white and not cream. Okay. So now I just need to cut him out. Now, there are no dies for this stamp set, unfortunately. I think they would be really useful if we did have little dies with these. It'd be great. But they're not too bad to cut out, to be fair. So again, just use your scissors and you move your paper, not your actual scissors. So I'm just wiggling the paper to work around my scissors. I always take off any excess if I can. Again, just wiggle. I like mixing mediums if I can, because it's you can get all different tones and you can get different effects from different mediums. It's just sort of playing with them really and just sort of seeing what you like most to play with, really. So they're quite quick little characters to colour. Okay, so that's him now all cut out nicely. The one thing that did bug me was that little V between his legs. Now, I know it doesn't always bother people, but I'm a bit of a fusspot, so I am going to remove that little V just using a craft knife. There we go. Okay, so that's all my elements now all together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very, very carefully, I can still see this is wet, so I'm going to have to be very gentle. And I'm just using multi-purpose glue. Again, you use whatever glue is your favourite glue for this. And I'm just going to lay it on here and try it and just glue it, pressing down in the gaps. And then I'm going to do the same for the base of the card. As I say, if you were making this, you'd most definitely allow it to dry for a little bit before trying to stick it down. Okay. So next piece is our cream centre section. Remember, you can have this up whichever way you prefer. I think I did it that way last time, so we'll try it the other way this time. And I've attached this using Stampin' Dimensionals. I'm using quite a few on this because it's going to have my main image on it, so I want it to be nice and secure. Okay, and oh, I think that was the way. So I'm just going to centre this, and again, you would have allowed yours to dry nice and fully. I'm working on a semi-wet surface still. Okay. So these are our little elements. So my little owl is going to go on Stampin' Dimensionals too. So he's ready. And I also need to add a little sentiment, but I think we'll get everything else in position first and we can pop our sentiment on afterwards. So the first thing I'm going to do is add my little owl to this little top corner. And then I want to attach my leaves. Now, when I'm sticking something like this, I put little blobs of glue on it because I'm not worried if it doesn't all stick down. I just want some of the pieces to be a little bit raised. It'll still be secure in place. It'll just be that little bit of raised elements to it. Okay, so that's my 3 little leaves. Now what I want to do is to stamp my sentiment. So this again is taken from the Adorable Owls, and I've got Hoot Hoot, It's Your Day. So I've taken off this So You're So Cute, and I've stamped this in Starry Sky ink as well. I'm going to stamp the whole image and then I will trim it. Now, if I was using photopolymer stamps, I would almost definitely cut my strip of card first and then I would stamp onto it. But because we're using the clear stamps, which aren't clear, of course, because we're using the clear stamps, they don't give you that precision that you would get with a photopolymer. So I just use a little chopper and I use my eye mainly just to trim. So I can see it's on a slight slant here. So I've cut it a little bit bigger because then I can adjust until I'm happy that that's quite straight. And then I know I can line this up. I'm just using my eye to make sure it's lined up on that edge. It's a little bit wide. Okay, there's one. And now I want to take off the You're So Cute. So I'm probably going to have a little bit of it left to start with, because I just want to make sure that that's running in a straight line, which it isn't quite. So I'm just going to trim again. Okay, I'm quite happy that's reasonably straight now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the top section first by making sure, again by eye. If you're not comfortable doing it by eye, then of course you can measure whichever way you prefer, or whether you use a knife or whatever you use really. I do a lot just by eye, just because I'm so used to doing it that way, but do whatever you're comfortable with. Let's get rid of those bits. So you see I've purposely left them a lot longer than I needed them. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to cut my little banner end. And again, everyone has their own way of doing this. I just go in with the scissors. Some people cut up the middle and then they cut across. That's another way to do it. I tend to do it by eye just because, again, I'm so used to doing it. So what I want to do is to poke these into here, and I've just raised the very ends using Stampin' Dimensionals, and I have just managed a little smudge there, see? So, what to do? Shall we do something else? Shall we do who It's Your Day down here? Because then this little ribbon will cover it up. What do you think? There's always ways around things, so don't ever think, oh, that's ruined it, because we can always hide it a little bit. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm not going to raise the end this time. And I'm just coming across just so I can hide that little smudge. Now that won't go under, so I need to cut that off a little bit. That's fine where it is, because we're going to have a ribbon over that top edge, remember? To say, there's always ways around things. Don't ever give up on your project because you've smudged something or done something you shouldn't have done, because it always ways around things. Okay. And for this one, I actually tied even, very trying, triple bow. So I've just got 3 lengths of thread here. And I'm literally going to tie them into a bow. Now you can see it's all at different lengths at the moment, but that's fine. Just going to grab my ends just so I don't pull them through too much. And then I'm going to pull again. I think I might actually have one of the ends through a loop, if that makes sense. Oh no, I didn't. I've just undone that. Start again. So I've just got my 2 3 lengths. I'm going to make 2 little bunny ears, and I'm folding one over the other and just poking them through that hole. I'm going to hold tight to them this time. It's a little bit fiddly because you've got the 3 layers, but just persevere with it. if at first you don't succeed, see. That's better. Okay, so I don't lose my ends, I'm just going to pull them back through. And then I can readjust them to the size I want them to be. Now, I've managed to do a very uneven bow there, but I'm still not worried about that. Because I'm going to trim all the ends, and as if by magic, there you go. It's done. So, don't give up. Just if you've got a little smudge or you've got something that's bothering you, just readjust your card. It's fine. Now, I'm using a little bit of the tear tape here, only because I've run out of glue dots. They are in my order, so I'm waiting for them to arrive. But I would most definitely use a glue dot for this in normal circumstances. So I'm just going to pop my little bow on there. And then finally, if you want to add some little embellishments, you can. Entirely up to you. I used the champagne rhinestones on this one. But I've got a few of these elegant faceted gems left, which I absolutely love. So I'm actually going to use these, and I've got another little smudge there where I haven't let it dry. So that's going to get hidden. Another little one there, and one at the top. So there we go. So that is our adorable owl. I bring that back in so you can see how lovely it is. And yeah, just a cute little set. I know you're going to want this one. So as I say, this will be available from January. For every £45 you spend, you can get your very own copy of this stamp set. So I hope you like that. Apologise for the tickly throat tonight. As I say, I think I'm getting a bit of a cold, unfortunately. So I do apologise for that, and I hope it's not put you off the actual crafting itself. Have fun, and I will see you soon. Take care. Bye.